evening, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled after 40:55 meeting. First item is the pledge to the flag. Please join me.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There have been no executive sessions since our last meeting. So at this point, I would like to open up the floor for communication from citizens. If there is anyone who would like to address the board, please come forward and be recognized, or if you are on our Zoom call, please click the raise hand button to be recognized. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, good evening. My name is James Kelly. I live at 40 Merchant Drive in the township resident for 15 years. Last week, I received a certain violation for honeybees that were kept on our property. In 2018, my wife Kristen decided that she wanted to keep honeybees on the property. Before I was doing so, she came to the township to inquire if we were permitted to do so. The woman working at the desk of our information stated that we lived in an R10 residential area and that there were no restrictions on having honeybees on the property. Other than we did have to register with the state, which we did. Krista started her hobby, spending time and money over the years on supplies and bees. And today we have numerous hives on the property. Bees work to pollinate the neighborhood gardens and flowers and produce honey back to the gardens. In May of this year, I understand Tom Curry and the Pennsylvania Beekeepers Association attended a supervisor meeting and provided a presentation on beekeeping in residential neighborhoods. I understand at the time that there were some concerns from the board. And to answer those concerns, I would offer the following. This is our first 5th year of beekeeping. We have never received any complaint from any neighbors or others who visit the house. The only thing that we've ever heard was years ago that we were using a neighbor's swimming pool. We took substantial steps since then to create bird feeders and other water sources on our property so that the bees do not wander away for water. When we first got the bees, I was nervous because I am allergic. After educating myself on their habits and spending time around them, I am able to sit on my front porch and feed them with no problems and not be involved with concerns. Also in 2018, when we started, our children were 6, 8, and 11 years old. We've never had any problems or concerns for their safety around the bees. We also have neighbors who come together who do not have any issues themselves. We have recently checked with one of our neighbors within 250 feet of our house and found anyone that didn't find anyone close to us having bees. In fact, the majority of the neighbors support us having bees on the property and welcome them to the neighborhood, as we often get positive comments. The hives are 40 feet from the street, and the closest neighbor to the hive is 50 feet away. Our neighborhood is an active community with walkers and bike riders who go by the house daily and never receive any complaints. We have had several hives swarm in the early spring, but we've only had 2 that have left the property and we were able to recover. Additionally, we have swarm boxes on the property, which have caught bees have been swarming through the area that we're not. I was also concerned about noise agitating the bees. However, we are able to operate lawnmowers, vehicles, leaf blowers, and other equipment in the area, no problem. Our 13-year-old daughter actually mows the grass next to them and does not have any issues. Additionally, Chris is a member of the VA Beekeepers Association. She follows best practices for beekeeping and considers the safety and well-being of the bees, as well as to minimize any potential issues or concerns from the neighborhood. In summary, honeybees are good for our neighborhood. There are studies and a wealth of information to back that up. Wild bumblebees, purple bees, wild hornets, they pose more danger to our neighborhood within the township than controlled residential honeybees. With that said, that brings me back to the zoning violation. Spring-Break Council Ordinance 325-19A. It outlines several permitted uses within the R10 prohibited use is overall, stating anything that is not permitted is prohibited. While there are many things I can think of that would be permitted in our everyday lives, it creates an unreasonable justification of what could be prohibited, which can create an enforcement issue. Regardless, we're all abiding citizens and we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. We are disappointed that even after going to the township to make sure that we were doing the right, we are now faced with this predicament of having to defend ourselves to maintain our lives through an exception of the zoning hearing. The cost of $500 for the zoning is substantial to our family. And since we acted in good faith, we were misled by the township employee. I'm here to respectfully ask that you get a waiver on the zoning appeal date for the fee. For the board is seeking immediate remedy. The witness information provided by myself, Mr. Kearney, and the Pennsylvania Youth People Association. I would ask that the township amend the ordinance to allow beekeeping as a permitted use within the R10 residential area. If this is done, I would ask that the township suspend our zoning violation until the details of the amendment or the ordinance may be updated. In addition, I would offer any of you to come visit the house and observe for yourself how the new work and how it's beneficial to the neighborhood and the township. Excuse me. May I approach this in 50? Sure. And my wife, Kristen, is here also to answer any questions that you might have.
I appreciate you coming forward and talking to us about this. We were taking a look into it at the last meeting, and then I could come to agree with it. My son is in pest control, and he's not a danger. I'm blessed to attack them. Yellow jack on labs, other things like that, get their own problem. Right. And I think most people have a misunderstanding. Agreed. Well, again, so
They were in the common bag. Cost. Advertising.
I'm not suggesting to do that, but yeah, so what about the process we take a look at whether or not it's something that open up, you know, or I mean, is it reasonable to say in that particular zoning, you know, what
I'm sorry, is it that?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all that's saying is that wow. You want to list, I mean, it's
Something that there's no rational reason to prohibit.
well, but then should be free, and you should consider that.
So either way, that is zoning. Permit.
Yes.
In
Certain ones, certain.
but if you didn't have to do, you were wrong, nothing right. Even these. Yeah, right. You're going high density residential or out of the property. So family, like rural residential or things like that. That are-
It's allowed in rural.
It is,
It's considered to be, and the problem is, I don't realize that.
that's correct.
That's their fault.
And it lumps a whole bunch of things, like having cows and horses, chickens, that, you know, we've had a lot of
Yeah.
appeals to our zoning hearing board. And right under that is beekeeping and apiary. And so it's defined as an ag use. Because at that time, that's where those practices were only done, not in dense residential, or having, well, in small lots, like a quarter acre, or maybe half acre, something like that. So.
I don't know, what made me think of that whole time. Are the workers that the pets? The pets, you have removed the number of pets.
We have to name all the bees.
If it brings the zoning report that they're pets. So other than that, I don't just. It's a problem, I mean, you know, I think, you know, back in the day. Aviaries were. But now you're kind of getting the whole thing. Now you're getting into the whole. It's not just production. The whole. Social, you know, kind of thing where almost.
Right. But I think that would bring it back to, you know, looking at that and maybe even looking perhaps at zone and which residential zone would be acceptable to happen. I think it's fair to say that the house and being limited and based on the definition of the land, that we're a medium lot, single family residential district. You've heard my argument on, you know, why they're good for the neighborhood, good for the township. I think then we would simply just be asking for it to be added as a permitted.
Now, in Thomas here with.
Of the Peak Association of Pennsylvania.
There was discussion about holding union. It sounded like the lengthy process. Now, if the board is inclined to favor sooner rather than later, the zoning officer is necessary, zoning officer knows that doesn't necessarily. Quick. Yeah, on the whole fact, you know, he knows that there's a change.
Our recollection in that meeting. That there was some concern. And all essentially the problem that we all the issues. So all basically.
They have not,
That's what I think.
that would be correct.
Right, and I did read the minutes regarding that meeting, and you know, I took note of each of the board members' concerns. You know, obviously, I agree safety is a concern for everyone. I think everything that was reported today pretty much itself.
I'm a little concerned about the happening. Mission. I don't think. It's just a little bit. Right. Yeah, that's something. You don't remember the name?
My wife actually spoke with her and had a conversation with her.
You don't remember the name?
May I ask, was it potentially the former director of community development of this field house?
She would have been the acting zoning, she would have been the zoning officer at that time.
How long ago was it?
It would have been 20.
Just talk on the phone, or we go face to face, right there.
She said she had a young child, and they were talking about a campaign at the time before. Regardless, you know, we were trying to do the right thing at the time to make sure that we weren't committing, you know, even active last 5 years of the meeting. No knowledge that this was a violation of valid. No, we do, we're trying to make it right and still sustain having to use the property.
Doesn't apply.
No, we haven't, I wanted to come to the board first. Because I was thinking if, we could get an amendment for the very violation of the law.
I would, but you know what?
Right. Right, and that's why I would ask that, you know, the enforcement of this be suspended until there's a resolution.
Yeah, I would consider a couple months, even maybe a year would be that. So you know that we're headed in the direction of making that. And the conflict is anyway. And for walking, so one way or the other, that's where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with- Maybe, I mean, in this particular instance, maybe we're giving permission.
And we'll be happy to talk further about that. I left my number on the back of the one there. Like I said, we're willing to have you out at the house and prepare for yourself.
Maybe you can do us a favor, find out, your whole. Each is in the same
Right.
situation.
Right. Yeah, we're neighbors with Tom.
Find out what's going on, what do they do? What?
And we'll, and you would still recommend that we apply for the exam, or can that be suspended until there's further work?
How much money?
I think it was 30 days from receiving the letter. Which was last week.
Hold on.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Can I, sorry, it sounds like there's still sound issues. If anybody else wants to speak, maybe they could talk closer to this microphone, because I think this goes directly in the microphone that's in this camera.
Okay.
And then we did have somebody with a hand up. It looks like they put their hand down, but,
Is there someone who would like to address the board from, yeah, there's.
Yep.
All right, I think it's Chris. Would you please tell us your name and address?
My name's Chris Highland. My address is 2505 Schoolhouse Lane. Am I hearing right? Everybody's hearing me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay. I addressed this board several times last year about my concern with this intersection. Your situation at the time was a larger sign and painting lines. It's an intersection of Sundale and Schoolhouse. There's still an issue with people running the stop sign and speeding. On a number of cases near misses and possible T-bone, I've already have spoken to one of your officers that assume patrol this area a handful of times. He told me himself, drivers are going too fast for this area and not taking the time to stop at the stop sign. I have 2 cameras up facing the intersection, so I'm catching everything. Also, I started a petition to enhance the safety for this intersection. I have about 100 signatures and I have no problem getting another 100. Citizens of this neighborhood are proposing speed tables on Sundale. You mark my words, if you let this go and don't do anything, we are going to have an accident here. Going to get worse once school starts in about 4 weeks. Thank you.
For public works and the manager. I know we discussed that, I think that was all the solution.
I'm having trouble hearing you guys.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of a problem with our Zoom meeting with the audio, so please bear with us. I just asked the chief to respond. You will not be able to hear him. So chief said that speed tables was one thing that they could discuss, and
Large sign.
and water signs and doing another survey. So our township engineer and our manager and our chief of police will be getting their heads together to figure that out, and we'll be in touch with you, let you know what's going to be happening.
Yeah, I still didn't hear anything you guys were saying.
Well, it should be picking up from you.
It should be picking up for me.
Yeah,
Where's the microphone on the camera?
it's just right.
Can you hear me if I come over here?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, so it is just here. All right, so the chief, the engineer, and our manager will be getting their heads together and discussing with you also. They're going to take a look at speed tables, larger signs, and also doing a resurvey of speed in the area.
Okay, because I got cameras up and I'm rewinding back and I'm seeing a lot of almost near misses and T-bones. And it's just crazy how people just aren't stopping and they come off the hill and speeding. I mean, it's crazy. Even the officer is saying we need to do something.
If you have some clips of that you can share, I'm sure that would be appreciated.
Oh yeah, I got plenty of clips.
Yeah, the studies that we've done in the past show that the median speed in the area is not excessive. I'm sure that there are always going to be exceptions to that, but we are trying to find a solution for you. So
I hope so, because it just I don't want anybody to get hurt or get deboned.
I understand, and we don't either. Okay,
All right, I
thank
appreciate
you.
it. Yeah, thank you.
We do a test. Try.
Test. Can you guys hear me?
That's better.
Okay, so if I talk right into the microphone. And these things, so I can't bring it any closer. All right, is there anyone else who would like to address the board from the Zoom meeting or from the audience? All right, we will move on to our engineering reports. First one, Diana.
Good evening, gentlemen. I have nothing to add or change on my report that was submitted last week. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Thank you. And
Thank you.
John, civil engineering.
Just a couple of very quick updates. I did talk to the Kesslers. We do have our permit to construct the outfall for the 10 Oak Basin. We're going to get together, we believe, next week and finalize the right of way, so that should be good. Also, we submitted our floodplain report for 2021, and we are currently working on the MS4 permit submittal for September. If there are any other questions, I'd be glad to address those on my report.
Any questions for our engineer?
Mr. Cox has a question.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Said he has none. Next, we have our consent agenda. We have items A through I. Are there any items on this list that anyone would like to have removed for further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to have item C for further amendment.
Okay, item C will be pulled. Do I have a motion on the rest of the items?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve consent agenda items A, B, D, E, F, G, H, I as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item C.
Yes, could we have those minutes amended to reflect that Mr. Dvorak was not in attendance?
And you also want to make a motion then to approve them as amended?
Make a motion to approve those minutes as amended.
Second.
Exactly.
You did. See, now there we go. That's exactly what this guy ran into. I do have a,
Do you have a motion?
Yes.
Second.
I have a motion, I think, from Mr. Bishop anyway, because he said yes. And a second from Mr. Worcester.
To amend.
To amend.
Approve and amend the June 23rd minutes. Removing Mr. Dvorak is in attendance.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, bids, proposals, contracts, and agreements. First one is authorization to execute agreement with Central York School District for 2 school resource officers for the years 2022 through 2026.
Mr. Chairman, this is, at last meeting, the board approved the second SRO for Central. This is just approving the agreement itself. Charlie Roush reviewed it, didn't have any issues with it. The school board passed it last week or the week before.
I have a motion.
Move authorizing to execute an agreement with Central York School District for 2 school resource officers for the years 2022 through 2026.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Authorization to enter into agreement for law enforcement services, mutual aid.
Mr. Chairman, this is the same agreement that we entered into for COVID purposes with a few neighboring police departments to cover each other if there were shortages due to COVID. The Chief King approached me and we had discussion on the same departments would like to extend that agreement for any purposes, not just COVID related purposes. And I assume Chief is in the audience if he wants to add anything to that, or you have any further questions for him or I.
Any questions for the chief? We have a motion.
I move to authorize the chair to execute the agreement for law enforcement services.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Authorization to award bid for residential trash and recycling contract to Penn Waste for the years 2023 through 2027.
Mr. Chairman, as the board's aware, we bid that these services recently opened the bids last Wednesday. Only 2 bidders, Penn Waste for Public Services. Penn Waste has provided the best pricing, although the pricing is going up over the next 5 years. They did provide the best pricing.
Any discussion on this? We hear a motion.
Vote to authorize awarding the bid for residential trash and recycling contract and waste for the years 2023 through 2027.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Authorization to participate in industrial highway over 3 Mile Run Bridge replacement project with PennDOT.
Mr. Chairman, PennDOT has two things with this. This is the bridge that we've talked about before that's showing some degradation on Industrial Highway right in the neighborhood of, or right in front of Nemo Pools. Two good things that have happened is that we got this project added to the tip. And furthermore, the MPO has selected this project to receive 100% federal funding. So both of those things are really good news. Furthermore, PennDOT, and what's in front of you today, PennDOT has offered to, for the lack of the proper word, take on this project. It would be their project, their design team, their contractor through a bid. We would have a seat at the table through design, but we wouldn't assume any responsibility for all that work. I recommend entering it or showing our letter of interest to PennDOT, but would welcome any discussion on that.
Mr. Chairman, I move to authorize township to participate in the industrial highway over 3 Mile Run Bridge reconstruction with PennDOT.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next we have subdivisions and land development, Nally Fresh Drive-Through Restaurant, York Marketplace.
To the Board of Supervisors, this is a particular project that you had seen in the past, back in 2021, went through the conditional use process and did receive approval by this board. Subsequently, the applicant came back to the board with a repositioning, if you will, of the location of what was previously approved, 1 aisle over. This is in the York Marketplace Plaza. It was in front of the Lowe's adjacent to the fitness center there. Crunch. And the Board of Supervisors at that time didn't have an issue with moving from 1 aisle to the next. I did provide the board with a brief memo indicating that now the Nally Fresh folks, in response to concerns that were raised by Lowe's, to potentially move it to another site within the shopping center itself, which would be directly adjacent to the fitness center. And we do have Mr. Mitchell here representing York Marketplace Seating to speak to that. They obviously heard the concerns from Lowe's, being one of the big tenants, if you will, in the shopping center. They certainly heard those concerns and brought it to staff to bring to the attention of this board of this different location. The board does have a copy of what was previously approved by the Board of Supervisors in 2021 or 2022, I think in the early part of 2022. And now they've indicated the proposed new location. I think they're asking the question is whether this board would approve the location simply by action this evening, or would they potentially have to go through a conditional use process, because this is not where either one of the previous locations were. It's in a different portion, if you will, to some degree of the parking lot area. It's actually near the Eastern Market now, across from Fulton Bank. So it certainly is a different location. I think it's one that they had brought to the attention of the staff in 2021, initially when they spoke to us. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mitchell if he'd like to speak in a little bit more detail with the concerns that were laid out by Lowe's, and also indicate what their proposal is, working with the Valley Bridge folks.
You're gonna have to let him in or something.
There we go.
Okay.
Can you hear us, Jason? Hello? You're on mute.
Am I on now?
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just very briefly, you know, the reason for the change in the location, you know, through COVID, you know, as everybody can imagine, Lowe's, their business increased quite a bit. And we've been working with them, you know, on some different improvements to their location, their space. And through those discussions, they've voiced concerns after the fact that they didn't like the area where the Nally Fresh was going to go, because that's really their the main area for their contractors on that end of the store. And so, you know, obviously Lowe's, Giant, there are two big anchors there. You know, we've got to make them happy, you know, do the best that we can for them. So we looked at moving down a little bit, and you know, I think we kind of jumped the gun on that one, getting that out to you guys, just because in hindsight, when we looked at it, it didn't really alleviate traffic flow issues for Lowe's in that area. The area that we are proposing to move it to was actually one that we discussed with staff early on. It was the initial location that we that staff had brought to us and said, well, what about over here? You know, we have talked to Lowe's. Lowe's is okay with that location. Crunch is okay with that location. You know, so what we're really looking for here is not, we'd like to see if we can get that location approved administratively, rather than having to proceed through the process again. And I'm good.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions, just
We're gonna have irate residents on Fridays, because that area is parked heavily for these.
I asked that question too, but it is not their parking to overflow into.
Oh, I know.
Right.
I know.
So it is part of the Lowe's and Crunch area parking.
Shopping centers.
And they would have every right to put signage up there and have cars towed that were not there for one of their businesses as it is. So
if I may, on that issue, parking, I should have brought this up, but the new location is actually, I think, 11 spots. It takes up 11 spots less than our previous location. I think the previous location, we were 28 or 29. This one takes 17. So, you know, the net parking is actually loss is you know, 10, 11 spots better.
Jason, can you hear me?
I can, Bob.
That's not the issue. The issue is that the township residents use the new proposed area as overflow parking for the Eastern Market on Fridays. It's parked full on Fridays from 7 o'clock in the morning until 3:30 or 4 when the market stalls shut down. They don't have the right to do that, but they do it, and they've done it for 25 years.
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't see that as a reason to.
No, I don't either. I just pointed out.
No, I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
So I think that what I heard that we're being asked to do is basically say, this looks okay to us administratively, and not have it go through other processes like the previous move from one lane to the other was done. And if that's the request, I have a serious problem with that. Because there's significant traffic problems with having, two high traffic, and, the entrance to the bank and the entrance to this restaurant now, and it's a congested area already. I think if we're going to do it, we have to do it deliberately and not just sit in a meeting with one drawing and say, this looks okay to us.
Yeah, I think Don addresses some of my concerns as well. When you look at the design, how you will have to enter a specific space in order to then begin your circulation. The previous designs where it was out in the larger parking lot, it wasn't so confined. You had options of getting out of your queue. Here you have to enter a distinct space, travel then to enter. I think we have some other restaurants here in the township that are having extreme overflow out of their confined spaces. So this looks like we would be adding to that sort of traffic congestion. I'd like to see some traffic information to say that that would not be the case. So I'm not exactly excited about this plan either, but I would be happy to see it through the process.
Well, I think, we understand that those are their issues, and we're not looking for an approval tonight. What we're looking for is an acknowledgement and an okay that this can be handled administratively, rather than having to go back through the whole process that we went through last time. All those issues can be addressed administratively, I believe. Whether they're, a queuing analysis or, traffic analysis, we do have, there are options for a dump out lane, or a way for somebody to get out of that queue if they need to. What we're really looking for is just not have to go back through the full process that we went through last time. We're willing to meet all the criteria of the approval, from that we have. But we feel and hope that everything that's changed can be handled administratively, to the satisfaction of the board.
I for one, don't really understand what it means when you say to handle it administratively. I just don't know where what does that really mean? Where are the safeguards to make sure that that's done right? Are there votes? I'm not even sure that's a process that exists in our world.
Well, when we met with staff, we were told that that is an option. The staff could handle certain aspects. They weren't saying that they could handle this. That was for the board to decide. But when it moved from one lane to another lane, that was an administrative, handled administratively.
So I would agree with you if you were jumping from one lane in that parking lot in front of the Lowe's to the next lane over. That is a cookie cutter, paste right into the next lane. This is in a different area. It's between two buildings. It looks rather constrained. There are concerns that the board has that I think that we want to address as you go through the process. If you believe that you can satisfy all of them, then it should not take us very long to come to that agreement.
Sorry, I was on mute. So is the board saying that we have to start the whole process over again through, and I'm just drawing a blank right now. I apologize. The zoning portion of it that we had to get a waiver on.
So let me understand the pieces here. The conditional use was
right. The conditional use. I'm sorry.
That for the ability to do a restaurant in the parking lot.
Right.
The conditional use shouldn't have been over which parking spots it took up in there. It's whether or not the use would be allowed. So you do not, in my understanding, don't have to go back through a conditional use process for that type of restaurant to be okay in the parking lot at that. I mean, haven't we already established that? Now it's,
Let me add, I think as they went through the conditional use and evaluated how traffic went in and out, in addition to the request for a conditional use, which was approved, they also got a waiver of land development, if you recall. So we have, I think what the confusion
you're
is, where's the,
you're right.
you know, you're gonna go right to building permit, where's the engineering analysis?
Yeah, you need that land
Landscaping
development.
and you can either do it through conditional use or land development.
But if we waive the land development with the conditional use and now we've moved and it's in a different place and there's development to do that,
At some point, we need
one triggers the
vet.
other.
We need a vetting of the
Yeah.
plan, and I think that's what I'm hearing from the board. I'm just saying, I think the condition. In our staff meeting, I think this occurred just a few days ago, right, a week ago or so, right? So we were talking and certainly trying to accommodate the developer, but at this point, we don't know where the sewer line is, where the water lines are. Those kinds of needed site plan issues that have not been vetted yet. So,
Yes, I think that, Jason, the concern is more that if we said you don't have to go through the conditional use process, then you don't have to do any of that other stuff either. And we're not saying that here.
Okay, you guys have been breaking up, but I think I've got the gist that what you're saying is we don't have to go through the conditional use, but we still have to go through
No,
a
what I'm
process. where we
saying
submit a
is
plan.
if we said that the conditional use is still valid and the position doesn't matter, then you also do not have to do any of the other land development things that we would require normally, and we're not willing to do that.
So we would have to go back through the conditional use process.
That's correct.
And would we have to request another waiver of land development?
Or you can go through land development.
Well,
I think we need to be clear that the applicant is responsible for deciding what they need to do. We were asked if we could short circuit the process and just say, okay. And I think what we're coming to is that we're not short circuiting the process and saying it's okay, but I think it's not wise for us to tell them here without consideration what process they do need to go through.
yeah, I mean, I apologize. I wasn't looking for an okay on the plan tonight and, move forward with what we presented. Obviously, it's not a full engineered plan. Right, but we do need guidance on what process to follow because we have an approved plan. Right, and we're looking to amend that plan, or you're saying we can't amend it, we have to start the whole process all over again.
Well, I think,
And honestly,
trying to make it sound worse than it is. Again, there's a distinction between just a slight modification on something that you had already approved versus moving it to a totally different area, opposing entrances with the bank, a totally different circulation method with potential issues that have to be vetted there. You don't know where the water and sewer lines are and everything else that you would need to make this work. So you kind of really do have to start over. And I don't, we're not trying to say this to discourage you or tell you that you can't do this. We're just saying that we need to go through a proper due diligence on this to make sure that it's actually gonna work.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
All right, next we have subdivision 2021-0006 York Galleria Limited Partnership, 2899 Whiteford Road.
That's all right. This stick,
Just don't grab it by the
yeah,
microphone.
or at least know an engineer. Mr. Chairman, this is a plan that the Board of Supervisors have seen numerous times. And this is the quote unquote Red Robin project with the Galleria Mall. And the issue at hand was regarding placing sidewalk around down through Pleasant Valley Road. And there's been a variety of versions, a couple of different versions that have come forward. And the applicant has now provided another version of revision to that plan. And they want to speak to that this evening. We've had conversations internally from the staff standpoint. That we think they've made a concerted effort here to meet the requirements of the Board of Supervisors. And we have Mr. Brandon Anderson representing the applicant tonight with site design concepts. He's going to speak to what has been put forth to you this evening. We also do have a Board of Supervisors plan summary that you potentially could take action if you so desire. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. And you do have the drawings that were provided to you. If Mr. Anderson desires to want to bring it up on screen, we do have the plan set available. Thank you. I'll turn over to Mr. Anderson.
Thanks, Randall. Presenting your gallery. Some visual aids. Configuration of Board 9. So we.
Mr. Chairman, he's going to have to find a different microphone.
Just you go to that TV screen and
It's
speak into that.
okay.
Yeah, and this
Okay.
is better.
Oh, you.
Can you hear him now?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So
Oh,
no.
Face, you gotta face. that
Okay, I'll just.
microphone, I believe.
Okay, so in May of 2022, can you see me now? Can you hear me?
He's just, are you just bunking?
Okay. In May of 2022, I was here presenting some visual aids, some site photos of the utility poles that were in conflict with where the sidewalk would go if we were to install it in strict conformance with the ordinance. So we took the feedback from the supervisors, went back to the drawing and came up with a configuration before the board tonight that shows the majority of the site conforming to the ordinance with a 4-foot grass strip and a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk, with the exception of 7 areas where there's substantial utility poles in the path of the sidewalks.
I think this is along the lines that we discussed when
Exactly.
we were talking through the plan.
Exactly, yes. Yep. So the addition here to the sidewalk, this would be a modification. There's 4 waivers and a modification. The modification would be for the grass strip. Instead of being 4 feet wide, it's 1 foot plus or minus in several areas. We did receive the plan summary that the board has and with the conditions, and we take no exceptions to the conditions.
Questions? Don,
I can't.
do you have any
Can't hear you.
questions? Can you hear me?
No, now
You
I
don't have any
can.
questions? Yeah, you can hear me, you just don't have any questions. Gotcha. This is like the worst parody of what a Zoom meeting could possibly be with everything that could go wrong.
I've never presented with my back to the board before.
No, it's not.
But you did not have your back to all of us.
Yeah.
And if we were looking at the monitor, you were still facing us.
Yeah.
It could be worse. At least I still have pants on.
Prove it. So Don has no questions, Bob has no questions. Anyone else? All right.
Mr. Chairman, with reference to subdivision plan SD 2021-0006. Preliminary final subdivision plan for York Galleria Limited Partnership, I move to recommend approval of the plan of the requested 5 waivers and modifications as listed on our track.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Chairman, with reference to subdivision plan development plans SD 2021-0006, preliminary final subdivision plan for York Galleria Limited Partnership, I move to recommend approval of the plan as presented with all the conditions of approval being addressed as listed in our charge.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, next we have SD 2021-0013, Stephen Stambaugh and Louise Duncan at 2091 Mount Zion Road.
Again, stand up here.
Well, if you're talking into that, it works.
Am I right?
You should, yeah.
All right.
I think.
Mr. Chairman, this is a 2-lot subdivision on 2091 Mount Zion Road. It has gone through the planning commission. The planning commission did recommend approval of the waivers / modifications, and as well as recommending approval of.
You say did or did not?
They did. They did recommend approval. I spoke incorrectly there. We do have representation tonight from Mr. Lee Faircloth, working on behalf of Mr. Stambaugh, Ms. Duncan. Mr. Stambaugh is on the line as well. He needs to address the board tonight. The issue that potentially is at hand for this particular project is the location of the driveway for proposed lot number 1. Is, I think the board of supervisors is aware there potentially could be some site distance issues, having additional driveways going on to Mount Zion Road. Certainly is a safety concern. The consultant's going to be addressing that this evening. Judge Stambaugh was speaking to that as well. As I understand.
I can't hear. I can't hear. I can't hear anything. I can't hear.
I cannot hear you, so.
Okay.
It was fine at the beginning, but you got to be closer to, keep close on the mic or something. I don't know.
He was about 2 inches away.
Yeah.
Put it in your mouth.
That's what I was thinking. Mr. Bishop, could you indicate where you stopped hearing me? Are you not able to hear me now?
Yeah, I'm able
I'm
to
hearing
hear
you after my name. So you said Judge Stambaugh something and then you went off.
Okay.
about right.
More than likely that you would be speaking to the board on behalf of this subdivision plan tonight, addressing more than potentially the access onto proposed lot number 1 in the driveway and the site distance issues that have been of concern overall through the plan summary, and that your consultant will be speaking to that as well. So that's basically where I left it. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce Lee Faircloth, going to be speaking on behalf of the project tonight, and as indicated, Judge Stambaugh is on the Zoom call. With that said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Faircloth.
Over here.
I'm afraid so.
Good evening. I'm Lee Faircloth with Cornell Brown and Associates. We're the engineer for this project. As Randall said, it's located 2091 Mount Zion Road, about halfway up the hill from the Township Building, across from Alcott Road. Our proposal is very simply to subdivide. It's a 3.5 acre parcel of land. There had been a house located on the property at 2091, which when Judge Stambaugh purchased the property was in pretty poor condition. So he has demolished that house. So the subdivision plan would create an acre lot around where that house was. Of course, there'll eventually be a new house built there. Then the 2 acre property, which is where Judge Stambaugh is proposing to build a house for himself, that's on the north or the uphill side of the property. That will be set up and create a building lot for himself. We pretty methodically went about this process of making sure that we had water, sewer, driveway, site distance to this property. And of course, we've received approval from DEP relative to sewage and also approval from the township as well. We also have the blessing of your water company to service water to both lots. The issue all along has pretty much been the driveway situation. And we also had early on retained Tom Alston with TRG to look at driveway site distance, and we've determined that we have more than adequate site distance for a new driveway to service lot number 1, which is where Judge Stambaugh will be building. The acre lot, which is in the lower part of the property for the existing home that's been demolished, is there was always a driveway there, but we actually had PennDOT issue a permit for that driveway as well. So we've done everything. We have all our approvals. The only thing we need is a permit from PennDOT for a driveway, and we need a approved subdivision plan in order to make application to PennDOT for that driveway. But we've done our homework. We have adequate site distance for that driveway, far exceeding PennDOT's requirements for a minimum use driveway. So we're here this evening seeking the approval of the subdivision plan so that we can take our next step, which would be to apply for a permit to PennDOT for the driveway.
So I guess my question is, we changed Alcott to be a right in, right out because of the danger there and the number of accidents in that section of road. What makes a driveway on the opposite side of the road from Alcott safer? I don't understand that.
I would ask for Tom Austin with TRG to answer that question. Tom?
See. Oh.
You're on mute, Tom.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
That's a good question. I think Lee really captured the effort that went into the evaluation of the subdivision plan, and right from the get-go, the issue and concern was whether or not we can obtain adequate site distance based on the PennDOT and township criteria. So what I can tell you is that based on detailed field measurements and being on that side of the road where the proposed driveway is shown on the plan, as Lee attested, we have adequate sight distance. Perhaps on that Alcott, on that opposite side, you may have restricted lines of sight and so on, but from our detailed measurements and field view, Judge Stanball was out there, Lee was out there, and so on, and we feel totally confident that we have the necessary sight distance to provide a safe location for a driveway, and that the applicant will be able to attain a PennDOT permit. The catch-22 here is that in order to obtain the permit, we need a approved subdivision, recorded subdivision, and a deed to make the application. So we're kind of in a catch-22 on this. But
So what happens if we go through the subdivision process and you don't get approval, HOP approval?
Then I'd imagine.
Go ahead, Judge.
Yep. Well, then I imagine, I don't know, I don't really do township matters too much, so I'm not as conversant, but I can imagine conditional, we need a fully approved plan. It can't be conditional on getting a permit, but we come back. So a little background to whoever asked that question. I apologize. I couldn't recognize the voice and associate that with the name. But when Lee said that early on, we retained Tom Austin, Lee is an underspoken gentleman I found in my experience. So I literally called Tom the day this property hit the market and said, I need to know whether we're going to be able to get a second driveway on this property with the PennDOT requirements. And he actually came up and laser shot that site with the driveway where we had it and where the current one is. And both exceed, and not by a little bit, by a lot. So I think at the last hearing, I assured, everybody that I have no death wish for myself, for my fiance, for my stepchildren, or for any of the guests or business people that come to that lot. I can tell you on that side of the road, I can see down that hill all day long. I can also, where we have that second driveway. So the existing driveway, you got sight distance all the way up that hill, more than ample time. I've been in and out of that lot countless times at this point. Now, can you pull up to Mount Zion Road and immediately proceed out onto the road? Absolutely not. But if you wait, I don't even have to accelerate hard. And the same is true, and I haven't driven out on the hill there, but again, Tom and I really precisely located that initially. And we were up and down that hill initially for that second driveway. And he said, I have sight distance more than PennDOT requires for a vast swath of where I would ultimately site the driveway. And then simply when we went out and sited it the last time, that is the maximum sight distance up to what would be southbound traffic on Mount Zion Road.
Yeah, the Alcott Road situation is a dangerous one. I've had an occasion to pull out there myself, but I think the biggest problem that we have at that intersection is the house that sits on the north corner of that intersection. I mean, you can't really see a thing till you're right at the intersection, ready to pull out, and you're a little bit beyond that house. So that's what makes that bad. The location of our new driveway, we don't have that situation. There are no structures. There's adequate area that we can provide clear sight triangle for that driveway, as well as the again, PennDOT required sight distance, which, as Judge Stanball has indicated, and I said before, we have more than what's required by PennDOT.
Chief, any comments about the traffic on that section of the road? Yeah, maybe you should come up here.
Good evening, everyone. That section of the roadway is heavily traveled. At certain times of the day, worse than others, obviously. I don't have a clear thought in my mind about that particular, I'm assuming that's the east side of the roadway,
Yeah.
opposite of Alcott.
Yes.
I don't know for certain without going out to actually look at the property, what the site distance would be. I trust that, all your measurements are correct and true. I do know that we do have a problem with Alcott Road because of the house and the situation with the house on that side of the road. I pulled out there myself numerous times throughout my career. All I can say is that, I do know that that road is a busy, it can be at times very busy, section of roadway to travel.
Well, I would suggest it's not just the house there because we blocked the left turn in to Alcott as well because the distance to the top of the hill is so short and the cars are coming up that hill pretty quick.
You mean cresting the hill,
Yeah,
coming down,
cresting the hill,
coming southbound?
heading southbound.
Yes, that is true. It is a short distance to the top of the hill. I don't know what the exact distance is, but it's
I mean,
relatively.
it might be within PennDOT site distance, but there's no indication that there's something coming over the hill until it does.
I would say that's a fair and accurate.
And
I don't want to end up with anybody coming out of your driveways getting hurt. I don't want anybody coming out of your driveways causing an accident to get somebody else hurt. So I guess that's why I'm overly cautious. My wife almost got hit coming out of Alcott, headed south, not north. Car came up on her so fast that she was lucky not to get hit. So I guess I'm super sensitive to that area. I know that living on Barwood, I hear lots of responses to that section of road.
We do have quite a.
So I could respond to that. I'm on an angle, and with my sight distance at the driveway that we are proposed, our proposed location, I actually see into the curve. I see past the crest of the hill into the curve. Now that curve, I don't know the measured distance, but they come around that curve and you're at the church parking lot. So as soon as they come around that curve, I'm seeing that car. And then I still have all of that time. So, I mean, look, I heard about I've always known about the Festival of Lights, and I found out that traffic is backed up all the way down the hill. So on certain days or certain times or certain things, we'll make a right out of there. It's but I don't want to have to do it at all times because there are plenty of, my buddies, we've taken a lot of dead trees out of there. We've been, really cleaning that lot up. And he pulls in and out of there with a trailer combination. It is, I understand what you're saying, but I don't want to hurt anybody either. And I can see into the curve that is past the crest of the hill. Now, I did meet those neighbors across the way. And I think, don't they also have bushes by their mailbox? I think I got some big bushes by their mailbox, if I'm remembering that correctly. And there's a big pine tree. Sorry for the dogs. There's there's other challenges being on the same side of the road that don't exist when you have the triangulation of the sight distance.
Any questions or comments?
I have a question that kind of works off the chairman's question. That everyone on the applicant side continuously references sight distance and the adequacy of sight distance. And I guess my question is sight distance the only criteria for judging whether another driveway is safe or not.
You mean the reason that we don't allow multiple driveways onto arterials like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can answer that from you know, from a traffic standpoint and from what PennDOT looks at. Site distance is the key safety factor. Okay. So that you know, that needs to be established, and if it doesn't have the necessary site distance to make it safe, PennDOT will deny the application, you know, restrict turn movements and so on. The other thing to mention about this parcel, you almost have 600 feet of lot frontage there, you know, between the two there, and it's. And what we're talking about here is a minimum use residential driveway. It's not Alcott, it's not a road, it's a minimum use residential driveway, not a lot of traffic. So from our view, and I said this at the Planning Commission, it's, you know, long lot frontage. It would be unreasonable, I believe, to expect two large lots with, you have total 600 foot of lot frontage to share one driveway. So we think it's a reasonable request that to ask and propose the second driveway to this lot one. And the main factor is that we believe that it is, you know, we can't provide the necessary and exceed the necessary site distance at this driveway, and we can't get a PennDOT permit. So, and we feel pretty strongly about that. So
I can add that so part of being a new judge is security concerns. And I've already had some incidents, and I've got to have my own driveway, which I intend to secure with a fence, a gated fence.
I'll tell you that my traffic engineer sitting next to me here on Street View of Google Maps just cleared you.
Yes,
So-
Judge, I've got
I don't know.
confidence in site design. I looked at the street view and I can see to the top to the hill. Those photos are reliable. But I do want to move to one of these sections on these conditions where we're not getting an erosion and sediment control plan, any stormwater. Is this typical for this type of plan? And I guess I'm going to throw that out mainly to staff to see these sort of waivers of these conditions.
I'm certain that with the driveways, if the plan were to be approved, the driveways on the side of the house would require probably a type 3 stormwater plan, which would be an engineered plan. At that point, anything over 5,000 square feet, which I'm sure with the length of the driveway, they would probably have to get a review by York County Conservation District, but we would get stormwater. And in this particular case, it's simply 2 new lots, but each of them, one of the conditions would be the stormwater and erosion control plan be provided to prevent any additional runoff or things of that nature.
So this condition of approval, number 1, it says waivers have been requested for each of those items. I guess I'm not understanding what we're getting at here.
Typically for a subdivision creating new lots, we ask for, they're showing utilities and things of that nature. Typically, we ask that they provide a grading plan, that they provide, a stormwater plan at that point.
Right. So as I read this condition number 1, help me understand, are we conditioning it on getting all of items A through E, or are we waiving those?
You're gonna wait until they go to building for that.
So we'll be deferring them, not waiving. All right.
That would be true, they would be deferred. They wouldn't be recorded on the plan, but they would be deferred and provided.
Okay, so we're not necessarily giving anything up if the, like, the actual housing develop, or the house being proposed is.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
So we're not doing anything with respect to a land development here, right? This is just the subdivision and we're not waiving anything that would be required by a land development. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Lee, you in there? Lee?
Typically, this is John Luciani. Typically, single-family residential homes do not require land development, according to the MPC. So we're splitting these two lots. Now they're entitled, as long as they have their utilities, or as long as they have an HOP, they're entitled to a building permit. But under our stormwater ordinance, they're gonna have to jump through the stormwater and erosion control rules.
Yeah,
So
we
this
fully
is not the-
acknowledge that we have to do. We understand that we'll have to file a plan with the conservation district and with the township that would address stormwater, grading, landscaping, these kinds of things. Ready to lift the permit to build. We just didn't want to, because we don't know exactly what he's going to be doing there.
We're still designing the house.
Twice.
That makes sense.
And with the sidewalks and curbs and gutters and streetlights and everything, we're talking about 6-month notes anyway. Well, streetlights waiver.
So what is the reason for waiving streetlights? What's our justification for doing that?
For the applicant, the question is,
I would
streetlights.
I would say that the ordinance, unfortunately, the ordinance doesn't, all the requirements in the subdivision ordinance applies to 1 lot or 100 lots. We're not building any new streets in this situation. We're subdividing what amounts to, it's going to be 1 new residential lot on 2 acres. As far as the streetlights are concerned, I don't believe that there are any streetlights in that area. I would imagine that Judge Stanball, in part of his security measures, will have adequate lighting for his lot. And so I don't believe that streetlights should have to be a part of this particular subdivision. And again, because of the nature of the subdivision. We're not building new streets, creating numerous lots, multiple lots.
Okay, maybe Randall, you can answer this on page number 2. Under conditions of approval. 289-10.a.2d, e, f, h, and I. Right underneath that, it says waivers have been requested for each of those items.
Correct.
Where,
So if we waive it, why condition it?
I don't see
Well,
photometric plan on any of the waivers above. Oh, it's, okay, never
Part of
mind.
the
It's in the preliminary plan.
That is
This-
correct.
We're still talking about preliminary plan.
We for a waiver of in preliminary. Your,
Hey, Lee, I started, Lee, can you go in front of the monitor, please? I can't hear anything you're saying.
I'm sorry.
And neither can Don. All right.
Okay, what I'm saying to the board is that we're asking for the waiver of the preliminary plan because of the nature of the subdivision plan, the fact that we're creating a new building lot on a 3.5 acre tract of land. We're not building streets. That we need to have a preliminary plan that would be looking at design and those kinds of things. We're not, you know, we're subdividing a 2 acre lot along an existing public road.
Okay, so I don't understand why we had conditions of approval listed if we just waived them in the section above. I guess that's what's probably tripping us up.
Yeah.
The answer is that if you don't approve the waiver, then they're going to be required to do those items. So it's spelling out within the context of a preliminary plan, these are what the requirements are. And if you don't grant said waiver, then they're required to do the ones that are listed accordingly. I hopefully didn't confuse it. I apologize if I did. But that's in essence, I think we've done that historically here, my predecessor as well. And if you don't grant waivers of what they're requesting, then they're required to do those provisions in the ordinance.
Well, yeah, I guess I've never seen them listed out because if we don't grant them, then they have to do them, whether you then list them out separately and say that they were waived above. I'm sorry, I was just a little confused.
Yeah, and I've never noticed that kind of if then type of combination here. I'm of the persuasion that I think that the board ought to have a specific recommendation from staff as to what both the planning commission and staff recommends that we do, and then it's the board to decide whether we grant those specifically or not. So then going back to the tracking sheet, I guess we got to figure out which one of these conditions are really applicable if we waive all 9 sets. All 9, or grant all 9 waivers, what conditions survive?
Right. So if Charles makes a motion to waive the 1 through 9 on the top section, what conditions remain?
Certainly the HOP.
I know what you're asking.
I answer the question.
Because then we have the next motion to condition it on the things that remain as conditions.
That would be correct.
Yeah, and I'm not sure which ones remain, so we'd have to go through here, each one of them. Understand that.
The HOP is rich. That one's up.
Here, Mr. Chair, may I ask a question just for my own clarity purposes?
Sure.
Moving forward. My rationale behind listing these and then listing what is requested a waiver is I'm uncomfortable with being presumptuous that you're going to grant anyway. I can list them all, but then if I don't put them as the condition, then they don't become part of that action, if you will. So do you see where I'm coming from? I understand where there's some confusion there, but yet if I make that assumption, I can't make that assumption. I don't
So
vote.
you did in the previous one, with the York Galleria Mall. We did modifications and waivers that have been requested, and we approved those, and then conditions of approval did not say, except if we did the above, then you don't have this condition. It was only the conditions remaining that were listed under the York Galleria document that you prepared for us. And I think that's what's throwing me off here, is because this one is not following that same format. All I'm saying is that if you had the recommended motion for that, if the waivers were approved, it would list just the remaining conditions rather than having to go back through. And there are,
I'm certainly not looking to confuse anybody here, and I apologize if that's occurring.
Yeah, because
That'll be
there's-
rectified, but
there's 14 conditions on here, but if we approve the waivers, then we take condition 1 away. We take condition number 4 away, I think, if I'm reading this correctly.
Let me ask you this, Mr.
We
Chairman.
would take away. All right, so. I don't know, it's just, it's.
I almost have my head.
I think I have a summary of outstanding conditions. We've reviewed this plan. If the board favorably acts on the waivers, the critical waivers are an access onto an arterial driveway. And curb sidewalk and streetlights. If they act on those, then what's left to be shown is, or what permits are required, the HOP or the newly created lot, bonding, plan signatures, and driveway profiles. Those would be the primary, oh, I forgot one, recreation fees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Recreation fees for the newly created lot.
I missed that last one, John. I'm not recreation. I missed that.
Every lot in Spring Township, every residential lot. And again, you're only creating one new building lot. There was already one building lot there. You could build, wouldn't even be going through this if you're gonna just build a single home on that tract.
Right.
Now that you've created a new parcel, you are required to pay into a recreation fund. Forgive me, but the value is somewhere around $1,700 to $1,800. It's set by resolution, but we would require a recreation fee for the newly created lot.
Okay. I just didn't hear it. That's all.
No problem. Sorry.
As long as you're not making me build a park on my lot.
Now, you could build one, but we give you the option of paying the fee in lieu of.
In lieu of, right.
I'll pay the fee.
Mr. Chairman, with reference to subdivision plan SD 2021-0013, preliminary final subdivision plan for Stephen B. Stamba and Louise A. Duncan, I move to approve the 9 modification waivers as listed on our tracking sheet.
I hear a second from anyone.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess I don't want to hold this up And if this were a typical subdivision that just purported to do what, that did what we're told it was going to do at the beginning, which is just give them the ability to go to PennDOT and get an HOP. I think I would be in favor of it, but I'm very confused by the all of the things that we appear to be waiving, and I don't have the confidence that we're going to, the photometric plan. We have some testimony about, well, we're sure that the security system's going to take care of streetlights. So we don't need streetlights because our security system will make sure it's lit up. But I don't understand where we have any input into that. So I'm kind of worried that we're giving away the farm here inadvertently.
Well, if the concern is having a lighted entrance gate, I'm gonna have lights on both sides of the gate.
I think the concern is more that they would be giving them street lights. So whether you have good lighting on your gate and toward your property, does that do anything to the road surface, or does it impair any traffic on the road surface?
Or does it bother the people across the street in Alcott? Just all these things, which, I don't have any illusions that, I don't think you intend to do any of that stuff, but it's stuff that are written into our ordinances for a reason, because we look at a picture differently, for the whole community than any one resident does. And since we have all of these things in our ordinance and they've been there for a long time and they've been carefully considered, it seems like we're just saying, well, never mind.
Well,
But it's a good
it's just that it's the process that Don's worried about, not the streetlights.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm concerned about the process. I'm concerned about the fact that I'm not sure that our staff all agrees what the process is going to be going forward. And yeah, sorry.
I'm not sure. So my situation is, my understanding is I have way beyond any visibility I need to get a highway occupancy permit. So I can't go get that and make sure that that is done until I get a final approved plan, which is my general understanding of this. Now, in terms of streetlights and things like that, I really, I just, if we have to go through and check something out on streetlights, then so be it. I'd have to look at those poles again. I don't know if there's any lights on any of those poles going up that hill.
Well, so I don't want to interrupt, but I would have no problem approving this subdivision, I don't think, if there weren't waivers attached to it for all of that stuff. I don't, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what that would mean, but.
Isn't the photometric plan, when you're talking about land development and commercial uses, industrial, those kinds of things, the photometric plan is part of that type of a presentation and an application to the township. When we're talking about a single family dwelling.
I think there's two remarks regarding lighting. I think the principal one is street lighting, which requires, just as the township is working on its new police headquarters, we're adding street lights along Mount Zion Road. There's an apartment complex at the intersection of Pleasant Valley Road and apartment along streets is every 200 feet. And I think I heard Mr. Austin indicate at 600 feet of frontage. So you'd probably have to put 2 or 3 streetlights, which are placed along that frontage there, and the purpose of those lights is to illuminate the roadway and or sidewalk. And then there's also, and I know during the planning commission meeting, you had presented some views of some of the embankment that's there, but the ordinance also requires sidewalk, grass strip. You heard the last group they're putting in for the Red Robin, like 1,000 feet of sidewalk along Pleasant Valley Road. So as part of that, they are putting, already curbed there, there's already streetlights there, but they're putting a grass strip and a sidewalk there. And that's a waiver, I believe you're asking for, but I think what I'm hearing is, you know, there's a completion of the roadway system that's required, whether you're building 500 homes or 2 homes.
Unfortunately,
That's where it falls.
I can't hear you, Lee.
I said that's where the issue is. As John just said, it doesn't matter whether you're building 50 homes or 1 home. The ordinance is the same. It doesn't deviate between something that's relatively simple to a complex and densely populated subdivision, or a commercial or an industrial type use. But the streetlights, if we're the streetlights, I guess we would be involved with PennDOT. We'd be involved with PennDOT to install those streetlights. I would think PennDOT would have a shot at, do they want those streetlights?
Well, those
How'd that work with
streetlights
the
aren't
township?
maintained by PennDOT. They're actually placed in the right of way. They're actually owned by the municipality.
Okay.
They're not connected directly to your electric. They're connected to the electric from that's run overhead.
Okay.
They're maintained by Med Ed, and we have a streetlight tax that we apply to you and the people across the street that pay for streetlights.
Okay,
It's the way it's been.
it would not involve PennDOT.
It wouldn't, but they
Okay,
would need to
thank
be placed and bonded as part of the plan.
So it would,
Unless those
Unless-
streetlights conflict with the flashing light system, they're worrying about the curb and the entrance, which is right along the property. If I read that right.
Point of clarification for me, Mr. Chairman. We're talking about waiving the first 9, but we're really not waiving 5 or 6. We're putting a note on the plan that says there's a 6-month requirement. Should we
Oh, we
decide-
said modification / waiver,
Right.
waiver
right.
/ modification.
What if we add that 6-month note to streetlights? Would that do anything to appease everyone? We would have the ability to come back at some point and say, we're exercising our right to require you within the next 6 months to install 2 or 3 streetlights, as well as curbs and sidewalks, if it ever came to that. Just a thought to finally move this along.
are you understanding what he's suggesting, Judge?
I am understanding that, and that's fine with me. In other words, I always understood that curbs and sidewalks, the township could choose to run curbs and sidewalks up that hill at some point. And I understand that once they give me notice, I'd have to put those in. The cost would be astronomical. Currently, it would be the only curbs and sidewalks going up that hill. But I mean, maybe you want to have people walking up that hill to get to Rocky Ridge Park. I don't know, but I don't know. But I understand that. And if you want to make that a modification on the streetlights as well, that's fine.
Don, does that do anything to satisfy you?
I'm still not certain that any of this is enforceable by us. Yeah, typically when we waive things like this in a subdivision plan, I have the peace of mind that there's going to be a land development plan that comes before this board, and we will have a chance to make sure that things are done in accordance with our ordinances. In this case, it's very different. So it seems to me a little bit disconcerting to put all of these waivers and modifications into a subdivision plan. And because of the way the law works, it's not going there's not going to have to be a land development plan. So I don't think that we have much say in what goes forward. And normally that would not be a big issue, but I think we also have to consider that this is not some road out in the farmland somewhere. This is a significant thoroughfare in the township that I think we have a responsibility to make sure that we get things right along this important thoroughfare. I mean, it's the way you get to the high school and to significant parks, and I think this really matters.
Yeah, I'm not following that, to be honest with you. So the modifications,
I get that a lot, so.
I understand the street lights, right? The curbs and the sidewalks, those are modifications. A 6-month note. You guys decide you want that stuff, I got to build it in 6 months, right? The rest of this stuff, I'm looking at this, what Lee submitted, and the rest of that, there's a mention about monuments. I'm not quite clear what that is, but the rest of it is really focused on the access drive. And then my understanding, you're talking about a land development plan. My understanding is when I go to, get a building permit and I submit, the house, the design, and I have the location of the driveway, and we have, the slope of the driveway, and we have how long it is and all that stuff, right? An impermeable surface and all of that. That's when you pick up all the stormwater, soil erosion control, and all of those things, right? Is my understanding of that. At least that's my expectation. My expectation is when I go for the building permit, then that's when all that stuff comes back.
By staff, but not by this board.
Well, I mean, either the agency, all those agencies are going to either approve those things or not. It doesn't have to. So stormwater and soil erosion, does that go by your county conservation district or whatever that is? I mean, they've got to approve all that, right?
They do, but we also have our own ordinances, stormwater, landscaping. I think we're waiving landscaping. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
What,
a landscaping plan?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, I don't, it's not that I think that the applicant intends to do anything that would not be acceptable to Spring-Sperry Township, but I think we have a responsibility to make sure that things are done in accordance with the way we try to protect our community.
So I guess here's the catch-22, Don. Yeah. The judge can't go for the HOP unless he has an approved plan. And we don't want to give him an approved plan because there are things coming later on that we want to have control over, that we lose control over if we give them full plan approval right now. So that's the catch-22.
Well, I think I said before that I would have a problem approving a subdivision plan that did not have all of these waivers.
But a subdivision plan isn't enough to give him what he needs, is it?
Yes, it is. That's what he's looking for.
So then why are we doing land development?
We're not doing it.
Okay, so why are we asking for the waivers?
I think we have a motion second.
Yeah, we do.
And then we're in discussion.
We're in discussion.
And that is going to shape the vote. So why?
Why are we waiving now if there's a land development come?
No,
There is no land development.
It's just the subdivision plan. So we have to do it now. I mean, this is the way it works. So Don, I'm not quite sure
Well, why are we waiving anything? I mean, you know,
Well, for instance, the
monuments already exist, so let's not put in.
yeah,
new
so I
ones.
don't care about that, but why are we landscaping plan? Why are we waiving a landscaping plan? Do we not care what that road looks like?
Is it because we would be asking for the waiver of the landscaping plan again because we're dealing with, we're creating a residential lot. We're not creating a commercial situation in the township where landscaping would be very critical to the township approving a commercial or industrial piece of.
But by what we've heard from you today, there's intention that, you know, there's intention for what sounded to me like potentially significant security work being done, which I think is entirely reasonable. You know, you should have that. You should be safe in your house. But when it's along one of our major thoroughfares and we're saying that we don't want to have any input into that, and we're just going to waive it right now. And the same thing with the photometric plan. We don't know what you're going to do there, but we're going to waive it.
We would be asking it to be waived as a part of the subdivision process, so we can go to PennDOT for our occupancy permit for the driveway. But we acknowledge and we agree, and we will present these plans to the township as part of the building permit process, that we would be providing these plans
that we've already waived them. So
for the plan, but we still can't. You still have the ability to deny a building permit until those plans are presented to the township and approved by your township engineer.
But you're in the exact same situation if we don't waive that. Because if you don't waive that, then you can still go to PennDOT and get the thing you really need, which is the HOP. And then we haven't waived anything.
What we would need to.
Well, you're right. That would not change that. We were only hoping because of and Judge, you may, I don't want to speak for you, but I would imagine that your plans for your development of that lot for the house are at this point in time are not finalized in any way.
No, they're not.
So how can we provide stormwater management and grading and lighting and landscaping and all those things at this point during the process?
So let's just pop through these one at a time quickly, I think. Preliminary plan procedures. Any reason we can't waive that?
No problem.
Preliminary plan specifications. Same thing.
Same thing.
Final plan scale. We do this, it's a modification asking for 1 in 30. We do that relatively routinely.
Yep.
Monuments.
They're all on
This-
this. I don't know why that's on there. All the monuments are set.
They're gonna put 2 new ones.
They're gonna be two new ones on the line.
They're already there.
Yeah,
So we don't even need monuments. Curbs and gutter. It's common for us to put a 6-month note on the plan for something like this. Sidewalks,
6 months.
6-month note. Streetlights, I suggest we change that to 6-month note. Direct access to an arterial or collector road. You need that in order to go to PennDOT to get your HOP. Access drive, you need that one. So it looks like what we have here
One less waiver.
is one less waiver and one changes to a modification. So if we have a motion and a second, if we vote that down and then have another motion with the way that we want this, we can get this done.
Or we could amend that.
Okay, we can amend that motion. and you did the motion. Would you?
No, of course. I would
Like
be
to
happy to.
amend your
Mr.
motion?
Chairman, I move to amend the motion by striking the waiver requirement number 4, section 289-26 monuments. That has been achieved. And amend, modify. Actually,
Amend seven
strike,
to a
yeah,
modification.
strike waiver number 7, section 289-30 streetlights. And amend that as a modification to put a 6-month note on the construction of 2 streetlights on.
Second.
Curbs and gutters are already,
They're under the modification.
oh, you know what? It says a waiver for a 6-month note. It should probably say a modification. Sidewalks shouldn't be a waiver, it should be a modification.
And I modify. Strike the waiver request for section 5289-31 curbs and gutters, and replace it with modification to allow for the 6-month note. And the same with section or waiver 6, make that a modification to require the 6-month note for section 289-32 sidewalk.
The second. Well, I think George. Okay, second.
George.
I'll second. It doesn't matter.
Okay, so now we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, we got there. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So are we ignoring all of the conditions?
We just, that's just the waiver part.
That's just the waiver part,
Okay.
okay? So now, the conditions. It's conditioned upon. Let's see.
I had that we wanted to make sure that we get the condition of the fee in lieu of the rec area. I think condition 5, 6, and 7 need to make it 8. We've addressed with the pins are in. And 9, I think. We need to bring it rest. So that was.
And I think 1A, B, and C. And here's my rationale for that. That I have significant concerns about the applicant coming in with a plan to our staff and saying, well, you already waived this. The Board of Supervisors already waived this. But yeah, we want to do it different. And that's just, I've been doing this too long, I guess.
Well, we just went through.
We actually did. It's number 1 above preliminary plan procedures. Waiver has been requested not to provide photometric plan, landscaping plan, stormwater traffic impact study, and a letter stating that an erosion control plan has been filed with the county. Now, so I think at this point, it would be hard to condition it upon something that we just waived.
Okay, so.
I concur.
And preliminary plan shall be drawn to scale not more than 100 feet to the inch. I don't, do we need that? Scale, I mean, that.
You
we
waived
already-
it, it plan scale, I don't think.
We
We modified that, so we don't need to.
Don't need 2, don't need 1. 3, I was gonna propose it's conditioned on
Three
fee
is
in lieu.
condition on fee and lieu. 4. It's waived. 5. Is conditioned upon. PennDOT approval. For the access. 6 guaranteed, we need 7 highway occupancy permit. 8 we can drop. 9 need
What is it? I don't have that.
Driveway
driveway
and
and access.
are
Paper, street light.
So we want them and it depends on it's gonna.
That'll be PennDOT.
Right.
10 we don't need because we already have that in the modification
Correct.
above. 11 sidewalks modification above. 12 streetlights is in the modification above. 13 direct
Already-
access
Already waived.
already waived. 14 access drive has already been waived. So you've got the ones that we need.
3, 5, 6, 7.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with reference to subdivision plan SD 2021-13 preliminary final subdivision plan for Stephen Standby and Louise Duncan subdivision plan, I move to approve the plan subject to following conditions. Number 3, 5, 6, 7, and 9 as presented on our track.
Good, Charlie.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to be sure the staff concurs with that. Do we have that?
It's fine.
I'm fine.
I have a question about number 9. Am I allowed to ask a question?
Sure, you just did.
Okay, well, I didn't ask, I asked permission. So number 9, it says the type of surface to be concrete. Is my driveway gonna have to be concrete?
No, it says concrete.
No, your driveway doesn't have to be concrete. That is not.
Okay, yeah, because I.
The apron does if you had sidewalks up.
2 minutes.
Well, that's another version of it. You're right. But no, your driveway doesn't have to be concrete.
Okay, so just what, the apron that goes out onto the road?
If you had sidewalk and the sidewalk ran through the driveway, that usually is concrete, but at this
So that's
point.
part of the 6-month note on the
Yep.
side.
Right.
Okay, I can put that in later if you guys want. Okay, all right, fantastic. That was my only question.
Question satisfied?
Yes, sir.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a long night. I know you're not done yet, so thank you.
All right, I think we're back to our discussion that started us off this evening. So we're at conditional use 2022-0005 Gabriel Brothers Plaza, 1200. Greensboro.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I hope that the same confusion that got caused with the previous plan does not get caused with this. But I do indicate again, you don't. Summaries to you, and that's fine. But I'm trying again not to be presumptuous in any particular case, because
I understand what you're saying. I just would like to point out that I don't think it's been consistently that way. Typically, what we see is the waivers and the conditions are both required together. It's not typical that we see the waivers at the top negate certain conditions at the bottom. And I go back again to the York Galleria one that we did a little bit before that. We did the waivers and the conditions. And they were all correct. As written. This past one, there were multiple conditions that were not required when we did the waivers.
I understand.
So
I'm
it's
here to correct
kind of,
for what you need,
Yeah.
rather than maybe what I think I presented to you, and what you want to see in the fashion that you want to see it. I'm here to accommodate you folks, not accommodate myself.
and
So,
no, I understand, and I'm not trying to give you a hard time. What I'm trying to say that we probably had a very complex situation in the last one, with lots of conditions that were in direct contradiction to the waivers, depending on which way we went with that one, probably more so than you normally see. And I think that's what threw a couple of us off up here, taking a look at it. It was a lot more digging into exactly which ones and which pieces impacted other things than we're used to seeing.
you understand it. The reason I made mention of this one is it's a similar situation because of the nature of what's being asked of this board and the nature of the site itself. It doesn't fit into some nice neat package in regard to this conditional use process. So the summary itself can be a little bit confusing, and I understand that. I'm not certainly wasn't trying to do so, but I think the information that I provided is contextual information for this particular conditional use application was intended for you to see, so you have some understanding of why I laid out the summary as I did it. So I'm just trying to provide some context.
We're all
for
good.
you.
We're all good.
All right.
I am going to ask for a 2-minute bio break. All right, so we talked through this earlier. And as Mr. Heilman indicated, we're probably in the same situation as the last one, where he gave us all the detail we needed to figure out what that detail is, correct?
That would probably be accurate, yes.
Okay, so I suggest maybe we start again with the with the modifications and waivers at the top, and then back our way into the remaining conditions at the bottom. And I'll tell you what. Wasn't too long ago that if somebody put two conditions and 15 waivers and modifications in front of us, that that's some happy campers there. All right, let's dive into it. Take it one at a time. Let's work our way through this. Refuse areas, a modification has been requested to install a double dumpster enclosure in the area shown. And I think that fixes a situation that exists now where it's not enclosed. We good with that one?
Do you want motions on each one?
I want a head nod.
Consensus.
I want a consensus. Do you? All right. One. Okay. Two, screening. Good with that one?
Good with that one.
Good.
Three, signs.
Yep.
Good with that one.
Four, exterior lighting.
Good with that one.
5, design standards for improvements to and reuse of existing building.
Good with that.
6, landscaping of parking areas.
I understand it. I'm good with that.
Yep.
7, pedestrian circulation.
With that one.
8, clear sight triangle. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Good with that one.
9, public plaza.
I still haven't heard any good reason not to get more.
Where do you want them, Don?
Because the parking's needed.
Not my job. I don't design things.
I'm good with that.
Are you good with it? Are you good with it?
I am.
10, streetlights.
Yep.
We need additional streetlights. 11, benches.
'I'm good with that.
12, street trees.
I'm very good with that.
Yep.
13, perimeter landscaping along parking lots.
'Good with that.
14, parking lot interior landscape. Are we good with existing? 15, public plaza. I thought so too. 325-204 and 325-207. Modifications been requested to authorize the location of proposed plazas within the shopping center and authorized on the shown on the site.
I don't think that's relevant. If we waived it, not.
Well, it's not the same.
No, it's partially waived, partially modified, allow the bike racks, it's we have to.
So I think one was for size and the other is for location.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
So basically allow the bike racks. with location.
So it would allow them internal to the area rather than external along the sidewalks around is that what I'm understanding?
I believe that is correct, as we're showing on the plan.
Right,
Right.
okay, so bottom line is I just went through 15 of these and everybody was okay with all of them except for one. And we have a majority head nods for that one too.
Mr. Chairman, with reference to Paramount Portfolio LMS TIC number 1 LLC conditional use application, I move to approve the 15 modifications and waivers of the conditional use sites master plan as listed explicitly above on our page.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay. Next, we have conditions of approval. Is there anything above that means that we don't need 325-200C? These areas of modification.
Do you need any of these conditions?
That's the question.
Well, there's 22 of these, and we're only 15 waivers.
So 325-200C is modified, correct? So we don't
That's
need
my
that.
reading.
2. Service and loading areas shall be located to the side or rear of the building. So that's been modified on number 2 above to keep them where they are, but properly screened. Is that correct? So we don't need condition number 2. John, you following along?
I am.
Are you agreeing with me?
I am.
Somebody doesn't agree with me, please speak up. Especially you, Don. 325-200E signs.
Let me go back
Okay.
to, we do have to condition that there be service loading areas.
We're not adding any.
Okay, all right. I'm with you.
Okay. Signs modification has been requested, so we do not need number 3.
1, 2, or 3.
4, exterior lighting, a waiver has been requested. We do not need 4. 4. Oh, that's F. Okay. 3.5. I need to speak this. Yeah. Exterior lighting waiver has been requested not to require additional. But this is all exterior lighting shall be designed to prevent glare onto adjacent properties. Well, we're not asking, we're waiving
Any new.
We're waiving
so
any
you can't
new, so we
condition
don't
it.
need number 4.
Right.
Number 5, Design standards. Modification,
Just in buildings being.
yeah. Show on the site plan design elements under 200H1 through 200H7 for improvements to existing building. We asking for
To do only to what they're improving, not the existing building, which I'm reading as not.
Okay, so they're going to do all of. So we actually keep the condition and conditioned on completing 1, 2, 5, and 6. Correct?
And I don't have the conditions in.
Modification request was for H3, 4, and 7. A modification has been requested. Oh, it says the 7 standards of this application, but on the top you only list 3, 4, and 7.
So I'll give you an example, 1 through 7, locate the building entrances toward the street, the buildings are fixed.
The building's already there, so only 3, 4, and 7 are relevant. Is that
And
what you're
parking
saying?
at the rear of the principal building, they're not changing that parking, these are interior renovation. 4 is the pedestrian pathways, those are shown on that
Yep.
concept plan, and 7 is pedestrian scale, articulation and changes.
What's 5 and 6?
5 and 6 is landscape along the edge of the property, which you've already waived. Yep.
All right, so we don't need 5.
And 6 is landscape island with trees throughout the parking lot.
Okay.
They have landscaping there now.
6, pedestrian circulation.
Sorry. Wait for a second for modification 7.
Okay, landscaping of parking areas was 200I. A waiver's been requested, so we don't have to worry about that anyway. Okay, pedestrian circulation. Okay, as they currently exist, so we don't need 6. Clear site triangles.
Some of the branches are in the site. So we can act condition. We have an existing site triangle that needs condition.
Okay, so 7. We don't need. 8.
Public plazas again.
Except that my 8 on here is 325-204. Yeah, that's right, public plaza, it's just listed. Okay. And so do we not need number 8?
I don't believe you waived the public plaza.
We partially modify.
Okay, then 9 is pedestrian scale streetlights.
Right.
And a waiver has been requested, we're not doing that. 10. Benches.
There's no new benches.
They are proposing benches within the center, just not down along Camp Betty, Washington.
Okay, this says the applicant does provide benches in plan, not now.
I think we have 3 new benches that are in our plan.
Okay, so that's number 10.
Benches and bike racks.
So we should that be a condition? Your first one. But it's partially
Condition.
modified.
On 3 new benches. Within
Areas of the shopping. center.
existing. Shopping center. Okay. 11. Street trees shall be provided. Additional. Additional street trees. Well. General design requirements, surface, park. Yeah, 13. So we're not doing that one. Is that right?
All right.
Thirteen on mine is parking lot interior landscaping. Parking spaces.
We're not changing any parking. Why would you
We're
add a
not
condition?
changing them. We don't need a condition. 15. Location and configuration of all buildings. Not changing. 16. Landscape and public plaza plan.
Might be, there's the same sections.
Uh,
Modify.
325-206. No. Applicant shall demonstrate the specific measures employed to achieve the objectives through the provision of a landscape and public plaza. You're doing that on the plan, right?
We've shown that on the plan, those additional plaza areas.
We just weren't include. Plaza areas are within concrete walk areas and we're proposing a landscaping. That's why we.
So this modification basically said do the plazas on the plan. By implication, they don't have landscape. They're not landscape.
So
on
we
the
don't
plan.
meet
So we
the
don't meet the
conditions.
All right, those were all the
Okay.
waivers.
17, location and specifications of lighting proposed for all portions of the site. We've already taken care of lighting, correct? That's up above.
No, it's not. Exterior lighting, yes,
Okay,
it's all there.
so we don't need 17, 18, the location of proposed street landscaping and type and size and location of proposed street trees. We said that we want doing that, is that correct?
I think there are 3 additional.
Yeah. But we already had that under 11,
I believe so, yeah.
so 18, we don't need. 19. The type, size, and location of landscaping for areas to be screened. We already talked about screening that was required above, correct?
Yeah,
This-
so
Yeah,
you have that screening shown on the.
We're not planning on putting screening around the entire perimeter.
No, we are not. I thought that was part of our modification.
Yeah. With that previous
I
modification. 20.
I think that's been addressed. We're not doing it.
We're not doing landscaping and parking. 21. Location, type, and size of proposed recreational equipment, plaza, focal point, public park, or other similar element. Benches, bike racks.
I think
That's covered under
plaza and the bike racks.
back up to, where is that?
It's first covered plaza. Applicant does propose a total of 3 benches and 2 bike racks with the plaza.
Is that 206?
It's 204. There's 206. Around 1. Yeah, it's require additional landscaping with parking areas or existing and operating.
So you said 20, no, 21 is location, type, and size of proposed recreational equipment, which is the benches and bike racks. Are they specifically called out in the modification? Benches and bike racks are provided. There's benches.
3 benches and 2 bike racks.
2 bike racks, that's number 1. Okay,
So we have part of this modification. No amenities are proposed within the plaza, but you have to.
Okay.
Those proposed 3 benches.
okay, so number 9 with the modification covers number 21. And then 22 is elevations or 3-dimensional views of the prominent views of the development. And you say your applicant has provided photographs of the full facade of the shopping center, which was fully renovated in 2019. So do we still want elevations, or do we not need elevations?
Okay, for that exhibit A4. Then I can say.
Yes, my question is, will there be a materially facade change with the new tenant?
I don't believe so. We've just read all those facades, so. Different, so have a different sign.
Different sign
Say-
that within.
We'll say tattoos and
That's.
Yeah.
I can do without it.
So it looks like we're left with condition 10 and 11. Condition 10 yeah, condition 10 is benches conditioned on the, but do we even need to say that since it's listed in the,
Right, it's listed in that.
It's in the plan.
it's in the,
plan.
It's shown on the plan.
yeah, and then 11, 3 additional street trees. But we already said that too, right?
That's also on the plan by application. We don't need that.
Yeah. So we're at no conditions,
So you don't need a motion.
so I don't need a motion. So that means we're done.
I can picture you're getting.
I think it was just a month.
Okay, I thought you also said conditional use, but.
So I'll tell you what I said. With reference to the Paramount portfolio conditional use application, I move to approve the 15 waivers.
Okay, so now we need a motion to approve the condition.
Mr. Chairman, with reference to Paramount portfolio LMS.
You're thinking.
Go ahead, let me hear the motion.
Number one, LLC. I move to approve the conditional use as presented.
Now, what about your issue, not having to come back with future?
I believe that is how we.
Or alternatively, do we add a conditions by recognizing?
Well, it wouldn't be a condition. It would be part of the approval.
Because I support that, but
I don't know if it could hurt maybe just to add that to the motion, just so it's clear. Because that's really kind of what they're requesting, so I think it might be good to put it on the record. So there's confusion down the road.
okay, let me see if this wordsmithing works. So I move that we approve the conditional use as presented to include the flexibility of the developer to bring in and out tenants in compliance with all other township regulations.
Without having.
Without having conditional use, repeated conditional use out.
Changes and interior demising wall change.
Line changes and demising interior walls. Oh.
We got that all.
I'm sticking to it.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I want to open this up for further discussion. Go ahead, Don.
Sorry, I nodded off there. I'll have a comment for the next section of the agenda.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Okay, the next section would be communication from supervisors, Don.
I would just like to commend the chairman and Supervisor Worcester for their diligent efforts to get us through the subdivision and land development plan section of this agenda in light of the horrible, terrible, and awful staff work that they had to deal with. That's all.
Any communications from other supervisors? Solicitors report, Charlie.
My only comment is going to reference back now to this conditional use. Plaza. I think given the, including the concept of just transferring in and out of tenants and just doing interior work should not maybe just apply to this situation.
You're right.
I think
You're right. That should be a
Right.
broader.
from going forward, I think that should be the policy.
I agree. I didn't
Yes.
realize that this was creating this sort of.
And I didn't realize that this was.
Because I think the language is a little ambiguous in the town center overlay, and I think if we can read it a certain way, and I think justifiably that we're talking about mostly exterior. We're not, because that one section H talks about change of use, but I think that's
As long as it's.
I think that's the trigger for doing exterior work.
Yeah.
And so if it's okay with the board, I think maybe in some discussions with staff, I think we can eliminate maybe if it's just simply re-outfitting without any.
Yeah, interior picturing shouldn't be
Shouldn't trigger,
anybody's business.
right, shouldn't trigger,
As long as the use is allowed.
right. Okay. So we'll kind of work on that and I think proceed.
And the signage to go with it on the front, as long as it matches sign.
Sign ordinance, yeah.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah, oh,
need to-
sure, yeah, they
don't,
have to meet that anyway.
yeah. You're not gonna spray paint over nails and put tattoos.
Right.
Gotta do this.
I was just thinking that there's gonna be like 3-story trampolines.
Gotta meet that.
Gotta meet the ordinance.
Gotta meet
All
the-
right.
Yeah.
Next, we have manager's report.
I have nothing to add to my written report, but will answer any questions.
Anything for the manager? Resolution number 2022-36, authorizing appointment of Deputy Tax Collector Thomas Dwyer.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution 2022-37, authorization to enter into utility relocation cost sharing agreement with PennDOT for Mount Zion Road resurfacing project.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2022-38, accepting offer of dedication for Conifer Court and Winterberry Drive in the Pleasant Trees Phase 2 residential development. Finally.
Move for the adoption of resolution 2022-38.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Only took 30 years.
30.
30 years.
I don't think anybody wants to talk about any old business tonight.